Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Secretary, to the General, for joining us today. Mr. Secretary, I'm hopeful that we can come to an agreement that we need both sides of the chambers working together for the betterment of the military. Do you believe that bipartisanship is essential to the mission of our armed forces, yes or no? Bipartisanship.
I think bipartisanship can be a wonderful thing.
Great. Because I didn't come to Congress with political baggage. I was called here because, I believe, and my constituents believe, that we need impartial, bipartisan people to find solutions to complex problems. But today, this nation is being pushed and pulled in so many different directions. I had a constituent this weekend that said, Eric, I don't even know what to believe anymore. Facts don't matter. Conspiracy theories run rampant like brush fires without anyone to quell them. So I'm hoping you can shoot straight from the hip with me. We're almost done. Do you have a targeted number of reductions in civilian personnel in our armed forces?
His goal was never to win ideological battles, but to solve problems in ways that unite rather than divide. He painted a picture of a country currently pulled in opposing directions, where misinformation, conspiracy theories, and deep divisions have eroded public trust. Sorensen illustrated this with a striking personal example. A constituent recently told him that they no longer knew what to believe because facts seemed irrelevant, and conspiracy theories spread unchecked like raging brush fires. This, to Sorensen, was more than just a political challenge. It was a threat to the very foundation of democracy and the ability to work together on vital national issues. In such an environment, the idea of bipartisan cooperation becomes not only desirable but critical to preserving unity, trust, and effectiveness in government. The conversation turned toward the Secretary of Defense, with Sorensen directly asking whether bipartisanship was essential to the mission of the armed forces. The Secretary's response, that bipartisanship could be a wonderful thing, was technically agreeable, yet lacked the force of conviction Sorensen seemed to be seeking. Still, Sorensen pressed forward, suggesting that the role of leaders in Congress should be to bridge divides and work collectively, especially when it comes to decisions that affect military personnel, resources, and national security. By highlighting bipartisanship in this way, Sorensen was sending a message that transcended the immediate subject matter of the hearing. For him, cooperation between parties is about more than just getting along. It is about ensuring that every decision, policy, and reform related to the military is guided by the shared purpose of protecting the nation and serving those who serve it.
We have very diligently tried to identify the places where we might need to make changes, but for the most part, it's been a DRP process, a volunteer process of civilians to try to reduce the number for cost savings.
Is there an analysis that supports how you're coming up with these decisions?
We looked at about 8 to 10%, Congressman, but ultimately, everyone here acknowledges that the civilian size of the DoD has exploded over the last 20 years. And so where there are room for efficiencies, we are actively trying to find them and right-size those spots, because a lot of those places are not making us more nimble or faster at what we do. And
what do we say to
about the people, but it's the numbers.
Right. What do we say to the people that have strived in their entire life? These are former, retired members of the military working as civilians back home. What do we say to them?
Well, almost all of them took a voluntary DRP to separate.
Do you have a timeline?
The rationale behind the cuts, as explained, was rooted in efficiency and cost savings. Over the past 2 decades, the civilian workforce within the Department of Defense had expanded significantly. While growth in certain areas may have been justified during times of heightened operational demand, the Secretary acknowledged that not every position was essential to improving the speed, agility, or effectiveness of the department's mission. By right-sizing the workforce, leadership hoped to streamline operations and ensure that resources were allocated to areas that directly supported readiness and capability. Sorensen, however, raised an important point about the human side of these numbers. He reminded the Secretary that many of these civilian workers were not just anonymous employees. They were often retired members of the armed forces who had already dedicated a large portion of their lives to serving their country. For these individuals, continuing to work in civilian roles within the Department of Defense was more than a job. It was an extension of their lifelong commitment to national service. Sorensen questioned what message was being sent to them when, after years of dedication, they were being encouraged to leave in the name of efficiency. The secretary emphasized that almost all departures had been voluntary, highlighting that those who chose to separate early did so through programs designed to give them that option. While this provided reassurance that the process was not driven by mass layoffs, it did not fully address the emotional impact or potential loss of valuable institutional knowledge when experienced veterans left the workforce. Sorensen's concern reflected a broader tension in government policy, how to modernize and adapt for efficiency while preserving the expertise, loyalty, and morale of the people who make the system function.
Okay, I want to reset for just a moment. And I'm going to be honest with you. I learned a lot about military service from both of my grandpas who served and fought in World War II. My grandpa Sorensen was a proud Navy photographer. You know, I have his photos, they're framed above my desk here on Capitol Hill. You know, I learned to be proud of him. And from him, I learned how to become proud of veterans, which is why I want to talk about a different veteran, one who served in the Korean War from 1951 to 55.
He illustrated this belief through the story of Harvey Milk, a Korean War veteran who served courageously from 1951 to 1955, but was forced to resign from the Navy because he was gay. Sorensen highlighted the injustice of this, drawing a personal parallel to his own life. As a young man, he had dreamed of becoming a weatherman, and he could have pursued meteorology in the Army or Navy. Yet at that time, because of his identity, the military would not have accepted someone like him. There was nothing he could do to change himself or how his country viewed him. This personal experience gave weight to his argument, showing how systemic discrimination denied opportunities to willing and capable individuals solely because of who they were. When Sorensen asked the secretary directly whether Harvey Milk deserved his country's thanks, he was seeking a clear, unequivocal acknowledgement. The secretary responded cautiously, saying that if Milk's service was deemed honorable, then yes. Sorensen contrasted this with the previous day's testimony from the Secretary of the Navy, who had avoided a direct answer altogether. To Sorensen, this hesitation was unacceptable. He firmly stated his belief that every veteran, whether male or female of any race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or physical ability, deserves recognition for their service. His words carried a warning about the current state of the country. He argued that the United States was sliding backward to a time when young gay Americans, like he once was, would not even consider joining the military because they felt unwanted. This, he suggested, was not just morally wrong, but also harmful to the strength and diversity of the armed forces. He made it clear that the value of a veteran's service should never be judged through the lens of prejudice or exclusion.
Sir, the decision to rename the ship was...
I'm just asking, do you believe that Harvey Milk is a veteran who deserves his country's thanks? Yes or no?
If his service was deemed honorable, yes.
Yesterday, the Secretary of the Navy was in your seat. He couldn't give me a straight answer. I disagree with your leadership and his, because I believe that every veteran deserves our thanks. We all walk in the footsteps of leaders before us, and you may not find the value in the fact that many of those people are women, with different skin colors, different backgrounds, different talents, immigrants, gay, straight, transgender, disabled. You may want to change it, but you can't. Because the America that you and I both serve is a place where everyone has the ability, or should have the ability, to grow up and be the hero their grandpa was. I wanted to do that when I was a kid. We're going back to that time. Gay kids like me, they don't want to go into the Army. They don't want to go into the Navy because you don't care for them. It's happening all over our country. My grandpa taught me never to judge the value of a veteran's service. And I hope, Mr. Secretary, you learn to do the same in your capacity, and you can find it in your heart to make that part of your process. May God continue to watch over our troops, our veterans, and our military families. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair.